Plug and Play Podcast. What is up, good people, listeners out there? If you're watching this on video, I'm happy that you're watching this on video. This is the first episode of the Lookout's newest show. It is a gaming-centric podcast. It is called Plug and Play. I am your host, AD, and I'm joined by my homie, Jay. Lookout ATL is in the building. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, man? Hey, Lookout ATL is definitely in full effect with this plug and play, man. Huge passions just coming together, man. So I really can't wait to get into all this.
Listen, man, it's been a long time coming. I want you to know that, like, I've been planning this since like 2022, probably even before that. And it's just been sitting in the rafters waiting, you know what I'm saying? We've had you guys come out, stuff like this, like going crazy, you know what I'm saying? We've always had the Lookout going strong. But it is finally time to talk about some games. You know, I be on the Lookout Twitch and Kick, you know, follow us over there. But
Yes,
you
sir.
know, I'll play my games and everything on there. And it's just something that we have grown up with. Like, just like we talk about anime and how we've grown up with anime and everything like that. Gaming is another thing that we've grown up with. And I feel like it's just time. It's just time. And what better way? I'm gonna call this season 0. Because there's no better way to start off this season, this series, with the release of Sparking Zero coming up soon. We are doing a full season of Dragon Ball games, you know what I'm saying?
That's right, man.
We had to do it.
Listen,
had to do it.
There's such a legendary row of amazing games that have come out over the decades. We're talking about 5 decades of incredible games for this franchise, and there's so much to get into before we get up to this amazing revival of the Budokai Tenkaichi Sparking series, man. I'm so excited to get into this right with you.
Yes, sir. Like, it's crazy when you talk about that, right? Like, you know, this year we've had the passing of the late great Toriyama, and you know, he's influenced all of us, you know, millions of people, a lot of different works in anime, manga, Western stuff, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like the gaming aspect of it is getting a little bit more revitalized. We've had the recent releases of Kakarot, you know, Xenoverse is still going strong. We've had fighters going, and just like the love for Dragon Ball, I feel like has never died. It's even stronger now. We got Daima on the way along with Sparking Zero that's coming out. So it's like Dragon Ball is here to stay. It is a lifetime of just enjoyment, the universes, the characters, everything that is just encompassing in the series. So I mean, first of all, the purpose of this show, you know what I'm saying, is to get everybody plugged in to what these games are about. So with season 0, we're going to be talking about the origins of Dragon Ball games, going all the way up into, you know, some of our favorite releases. We're going to talk about Budokai, we're going to talk about Budokai Tenkaichi. We're going to touch on all the good stuff, you know what I'm saying? But we got to start from the beginning on this episode. We're going to get to, you know, the beginnings of Dragon Ball games. But it's just to get everybody plugged in to what these games are and how we've come so far along with the series. So it's
just been the same as like the gaming industry itself has evolved over the years. These Dragon Ball games have evolved right along with the franchise, really, right? It's easy to say like, hey, I played a bunch of games where I started from Raditz, but if you look back in the years where there were games coming out where the Frieza saga wasn't over, or the Cell saga wasn't over, Bout, right? Like, you have to sort of like start from the beginning with these things in order to get the most out of what these games deliver. So that's exactly what we're looking to do here today, starting off the season.
Yes, sir. And I will say this: I didn't grow up with a lot of the games that we're gonna talk about. I grew up with them, but I didn't play them like all the way through, or like I may have never even touched them at all. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
This is gonna be my first time going through them, and we're gonna talk about them. And I'll tell you at least my experience, at least emulator side. You know, shout out to what we got. You got to
Oh
use what
yeah,
we got.
listen. Without emulation, I wouldn't have had my first experiences with these games 20 years ago.
I'm
You know what I
saying,
mean? So yeah, I completely get it. Shouts out to the emulators. Shouts
but it's
out
awesome.
ZSNES, man.
Oh, listen, EPX, SX, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
PSX2, don't shut them down. They do their work, but we always going to support the official releases when we can. But it also gives us a chance. It gives you guys a chance that's listening and to tweet at us and send us messages to say like you weren't there when we had to go through the struggle. You know what I'm saying? We're giving everybody a chance to get their takes off about these games, good and bad. You know what I'm saying? And we want you guys to generate the hype, the conversation, because we're going to do the same thing here. So we're going
of
to go
course.
ahead and press play into what is the origins of Dragon Ball. So stay tuned.
新次元バトルはデュアルスクリーン搭載アクションバトルスーパーファミコンドラゴンボール Z スーパーブドウデン3月20日発売。
First, I gotta ask you, bro. I gotta ask you.
Yeah.
What are your Dragon Ball gaming origins?
Man, Dragon Ball Gaming Origins, like I have to say, it even goes before like our first exposure to being able to buy a Dragon Ball game in the West, right? Um, I remember growing up in Texas, there was a CC's Pizza that had the Dragon Ball Z arcade in it.
Mm,
And I was just like, what is this, man? Like seeing these like 16-bit versions of like Cell and Frieza and like the Super Saiyans, it was just nuts. And I remember I would just dump quarters in that because that was all I had leading up to around the time I was in sixth grade. I had a best friend in middle school who would show me like emulators. We would like go ride bikes to his house after school, and like we would get on the ZSNES emulator on his computer. I remember him showing me the Gundam Wing emulator back in the day, like
ooh,
showing me all these different like crazy games, like all the Mega Man X's and stuff. But some games that really, really blew my mind was the Dragon Ball Z Super Butoden series, man. We used to play Super Butoden like crazy on just a keyboard like this. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like doing the WASD and the other person's on the
The
numpad. You know what
jankiest
I mean?
controls, man. I'm sorry, bro. I don't know how we made it
Yeah.
through them struggles, man. We.
And we loved it, bro.
Yeah,
We
we made it
loved
work.
it. And
Uh,
man, I'm telling you, like I'm at this point, like 22, 23 years in the game of playing Dragon Ball games. And for me, yeah, it all starts exactly where we're starting here this week with like those Butoden games, as we'll get into later.
mhm. For me, it was a game that we're gonna talk about towards the end, but it was Dragon Ball GT Final Bout. That was like
Oh man.
first my first. And let me tell you something, bro. This is how I knew I was in for an interesting ride when I was at a family friend's house and
Uh-huh.
I saw that copy sitting on their PS1, and I was like, first of all, this is like 2000. You know what I'm saying? This game
Yeah.
came out in 1997. First of all,
Hmm.
let's start right here. We don't even get GT until like the mid 2000s. So the
We
fact
don't
that
even get Z for another year.
I'm saying, and the fact that we get this game that's sitting right here, released in North America, and I'm just sitting here like, Goku?
Yeah.
Why?
What's a Goku?
Like, why he look like this? You know what I'm saying? I was like, can I play this? Like, I'm a young Dragon Ball fan. I'm like 7 years old at the time. Let me put it in the
Yeah.
PlayStation. See what's happening. It didn't turn on.
Yep. Yep.
Didn't turn on.
It's like, why does the game not work?
I knew right then and there I was in for a ride because I shouldn't have put that bitch in the first place. You know what I'm saying? Like I just shouldn't have did it. Cause but we'll talk about it when we get there. But my origins are with that starting out, and then we're gonna get into my real origins of like Budokai on the next episode. So the Budokai trilogy is gonna be the next episode. We're gonna go down the line with that. But between
Yeah.
that interesting first start with Final Bout, and then it can only go up from there. You know what I'm saying? That's
Yeah.
hey, can't really beat that one for real.
To be honest with you, right? Like you might as well start where you started. So that way, then it's like, okay, this is cool because you're 7. That's all you know, right?
Hmm.
Games get better. You go back to it, and it's like, okay, wait, but yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, yeah. But let's start with like the first Dragon Ball game. Um, and it's very interesting that this is the first Dragon Ball game because we've heard about the infamous Dragon Power on NES,
Hmm.
and we'll talk about that shortly. But did you know that there was a game that came out before that, and it's
That's
called
right.
Dragon Ball: The Great Unexplored Dragon Region? Literally the first Dragon Ball game to come out September 27th, 1986 for the Super Cassette Vision in Japan. Like,
What y'all know about the Super Cassette Vision?
you know what I'm talking
In
about?
all the things I know about, have no knowledge about no damn Super Cassette Vision.
If you ever owned a Super Cassette Vision, if you have any, like, if you have this game, please let us know. Like, send us a video of you playing this game. Because one thing about the early Dragon Ball games, and like a lot of them, like we're used to the fighting genre
Hmm.
or the fighting side of Dragon Ball games.
Hmm.
But starting out, Dragon Ball was an action adventure game. And this was like a top-down adventure game. Like, I'm surprised. And it wasn't even produced by Bandai Namco, you know what I'm saying? It was another company. Dragon Power, as we get into it, was the first Bandai Namco game. And that it was a 2D overhead action game released on the Famicom. We
Basically,
know.
a Zelda 2 ripoff.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
yeah. It was released in Japan November 27, 1986. I would never have like thought about this game, especially when it's called Dragon Power. It's a lot of
Yeah.
differences from our release compared to the Japanese release, where it's actually Dragon Ball. The Dragon Balls aren't even called Dragon Balls; they're like Crystal Balls, Bulma's
Exactly.
Bang
It's just a
Tank.
little kung fu guy,
Yeah,
right? Doesn't even look like Goku anymore.
right.
Like,
This man got a ball fade. You know what I'm saying?
yeah.
Like, oh man, you look like Alex Kidd. Oh, it's crazy. But the fact that like we get this game, it's a 2D overhead action game, you know what I'm saying? There's 14 levels, but the biggest thing that scratches my head when I first played this game is like, why would you make the health bar also your time limit?
Yeah, man. Listen, that game is just so notoriously hard because by the time you try to figure anything out, you're already dead.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I appreciate this game for like at least starting off the series with something that we we should know that as older people who have played NES and everything like that, like they're based off the arcade stuff. So like a lot of NES games have that arcade feel of like you got to have continues, you got to keep like progressing in a proper way, you know what I'm saying? Otherwise you got
Yeah,
to put
man.
another quarter in, that's a quarter muncher, we got to keep it going.
Yeah.
So like the fact that this has the health bar and you can take hits fairly early on. You can get the power pole within like the first 30 seconds, and
Yeah.
you'll be dead within the next 30 seconds. That definitely happened
Yeah.
to me. I'm not gonna hold you. After beating that first boss and trying to get out, like I'm left with like 10 seconds to scramble around and
And
try to
that's the
find.
thing, man. Like I said earlier, like you try to do anything where it's like, okay, let me explore around, let me see if I can go find a little like hidden room or something like that. Like, no, you have
Hmm.
this is one of those games where back in the day, people would draw out a map on paper of like, okay, I'm gonna go
Yes,
to this room and then I'm gonna go to that one, and then I'm gonna go to that one, and I need to avoid these guys, right? Like that's the kind of game we're talking about here. And far be it from me to say that I ever spent any crazy amount of time with it, because just
right.
trying to get through that beginning where it's like, wait, you mean I'm gonna die if I'm walking along too long? Please believe NES Plus got turned off fast.
Yeah, nah, not at all. If there was like cheat codes or whatever where we could have infinite health or infinite time, I would put that in a heartbeat. Let me see
Oh
how
yeah,
far I can get it. Like, come on, man. But it's crazy because this is also like a Dragon Ball game. So we get the beginnings with Goku traveling
yeah,
through like Mount Paozu, where he meets Master Roshi. It goes all the way up to at least like the first tournament arc. You know what I'm saying? We at least get that. We get the Master Carrots. The Master Carrot is a boss. We get Pilaf in there. We get Yamcha. Of course, you got Bulma in there. And as you collect the Dragon Balls, you can get certain items. And it's like, I don't know what they were thinking, I honestly don't know what they were
Yeah.
thinking with this game
But there
because
really wasn't even enough of Dragon Ball to really make a real game with here. Cause like it kind of just goes off the rails once you get past like that sixth stage.
yes. And so when you collect the Dragon Balls and you can make your wishes, you get four options. You get to move the title screen. You know, it animates the title screen. You get Shinron moving around. You can future jump, which is moving to later stages. You can power up, which is probably the thing that you want to get to,
Yeah.
or you can wish for panties.
And that's look, typical Oolong.
Typical Oolong, man. First wish out the gate when the Dragon Balls are collected, man. Like, come on, man. The 80s were a weird time.
Very, very,
They were a different
you
time.
know, like it was definitely one of those. They're like, look, whatever little Toriyama jokes were in there, we could throw all those in the game. You're not gonna see some of those jokes in no games today.
Exactly. Like, we need to keep this rating. This was before the ESRB came out too.
Yeah.
So like they could probably get away with a whole lot more stuff like than than now. Like, yeah.
And it's
But
like it's not like Nintendo was like, "Hey, man, like you can't put that little like pixelated pandy in the game,
oh
right?"
no, because
Like
they had Samus. You know, if you beat the game quick enough in the
exactly,
original Metroid, she in a whole bikini. So it's like
exactly.
got my eye.
Boys was wilding.
They was wilding in the 80s, you know. But we're happy that they've evolved from that, especially in the later adventure games. It's not as crazy. We get a lot more action, a lot more story to go along with. But because this was the foundation, I'm not really too hung up on that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
We
for
got
sure.
better. We got way better down the line.
And honestly, even before we get to like the fighting games and stuff, like what I really like is that early on, Dragon Ball Z or Dragon Ball as a franchise was really experimental with any of the sorts of games they did. You had a
Hmm.
lot of like JRPGs that sort
Hmm.
of came out for the NES as well. Even down to the point where they were doing OVAs that were just straight to a video
Yeah.
that you had to play on the Playdia, and it was the Eradicate of the Science game where it's like a pick your own choice sort of thing. You're playing the game while you're watching this anime special. They were just all over the place with the stuff they tried, and it made a long lasting impression because that's why Bandai still makes these games, 5 decades later.
Hmm. Like, and you'll see that they put in a lot more effort. They worked with Toei a lot more closely as we went
Hmm.
along. So, like, I appreciate them getting the bag came in, the budget got bigger, and they were able to develop a lot more, at least in the cinematic aspect. Though, when we start to get into the fighting games, we have to start with Butoden or
Oh yeah,
Butoden.
man.
I,
Listen,
I'm gonna let you
like
go
I
ahead.
said
I'm gonna
earlier,
let you go for it, man, because listen.
man, Super Butoden, like those games, like this was literally the most you could imagine from a Dragon Ball fighting game without playing some crazy Mugen or something like that, right? And even with my experience playing this game in 2001, being able to like take these characters and on paper you think a Super Nintendo fighting game, okay, it's going to be a Street Fighter clone. And while it is that to like the nth degree, right? Being able to do things like jump into the air and having the screen split so that way it shows player 2 and player 1 wherever they're at, and then having their little blasts being able to like connect and things like that, man. Like the Super Butoden series was doing really really well with just giving you that sort of feeling for playing a Dragon Ball game in the early 90s. And especially when you just consider like but all three of these games came out between 93 and 94.
Yes. In
Like
fact, let's talk about like Super Butoden itself because that
yeah.
released first. It was released on March 20th, 1993, and it was
Hmm.
released alongside Goku versus Cell airing in Japan. Can we
That's
talk
right.
about how crazy of a time that would have been? Like you're watching the anime and you're watching like, is Goku actually stronger than Cell? And then they market this game out to you and they say you can actually live that fight out. You can
And look
actually
who's right there on the cover. You know what I mean? like Goku and Cell. Like they're letting you know from the jump, man. Like this is exactly what this is all about, right?
Oh
I
man.
dig Super Butoden for doing something that a lot of games, well, in that era, it was normal to do. But as we move forward into time, they always started at Raditz. This one starts at Piccolo Jr.
Yes.
I
Yes.
really thought that like it was really cool. You press start, the main menu pulls up, and there's Goku and Piccolo right there. And you start the mode, and it just boom sends you right into that fight, right at the World Tournament.
The
Really
final
dig it.
fight, the final fight of Dragon Ball for real, and it's like the biggest one, and you just jump straight in. Like we don't get that. The Budokais don't do that. A lot of the Dragon Ball games do not cover Dragon Ball stuff. Like
That was later DLC for Kakarot.
right, we start off. We'll get to that because I'm playing through that right now. But
Yeah,
we'll get
yeah,
to that when we get to that when we get there. But yeah, man, it's the fact that we first of all, there's 8 playable characters out the gate. You got Goku, you got Vegeta, you got Dr. Gero, you got Android 16, Piccolo, Frieza, Android 18, and Imperfect Cell. That's a
but I'm
nice little lineup, you know what I'm saying? We don't get like Nappa and stuff,
yeah.
the in the middle characters, but we get the heavy hitters for
These are
those
all
parts
the
right there.
heavy hitters at that time, exactly, right? And it's really cool because with the story mode, you could choose to play as Goku or Piccolo. So you can
Right.
go through the whole game being like, okay, cool. Like, I'm gonna choose like one of these characters. But then, like, once you get past Frieza, then it's you can choose Goku, Piccolo, or Vegeta. And then once you get to Cell, it's Goku, Piccolo, Vegeta, Future Trunks, Gohan, or Android 816. And like I just
Mhm.
thought that was so sick how it's like you don't get these like stories from all their perspectives, but it's just as you keep going, you get more characters to choose from because they were available to fight in that time.
Mhm. And that's the great part that we also get like secret characters. So like you mentioned,
Yeah.
we get Future Trunks, we get Super Saiyan Goku, we get Super Saiyan Vegeta, we got Perfect Cell, and
Yeah.
we get Super Saiyan Gohan.
Yeah. The
Like
first
we
time you're able to really play as him in any sort of fighting game at all.
right. And the fact that like we while we got the Goku versus Cell airing at the time, they knew because of course the manga was probably already ahead at the time, but they knew that we wanted to get that actual fight,
Yeah.
Gohan versus Cell, and they gave
Yeah.
it to us in this game.
Exactly, man. Like they really were making sure, like, look, if this fails, at the very least, we can tell you at this point in time, this is everything you can do as far as the fights go in a Dragon Ball game. Uh, I do specifically remember Super Butoden being a lot harder than Super Butoden 2 and 3, just simply for the fact that you can't charge your key in it.
Oh, so
Um,
like I saw I was looking it up because as I was playing it,
yeah,
because like you have to fly to charge
yes,
your key.
and it
Like
doesn't charge it; it just makes it go faster. It's insane. It's insane.
there's a lot of
It just
jank in
makes you build it up faster.
there's a lot of jank. Like, I can forgive it because it's the Super Famicom, right? And so like we're used to Street Fighter 2 and Mortal Kombat also when it comes to that, and it feels a little bit better. But
Yeah.
for this, like I can forgive it because it's 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 a novelty. So if you're
See,
going back to it now, like if you like for people who are going to go back and play those
yeah.
games, like just understand it's a novelty. You know, it's something that you'll probably break out with the homies one time. And be like, hey man, let's try this out right quick. Because Jay, I'm not gonna lie, I'm gonna hit you and be like, all right, we got to try this one time for the one time, and we got to
Yeah,
see
of
what it's like.
course. Right?
But
Just to see what it's like. But outside of that, once you trying to put in the inputs and you're like, wait. How come he's not firing the thing? You're gonna be like, okay, cool, I've had my full.
bro, I don't even want to get into it because I'm like, why do these buttons say they do something and they don't? Why does this input not work?
Yeah.
Quarter circle
Yeah.
forward, B, and it's not giving me a Kamehameha.
And
Like, what are we doing
you're
here?
sitting
Like,
there trying it over and over, and it's just like, nah, man, I know I did it this time. What are you talking about, bro?
like
What
I'm
are you
not gonna
talking
lie to
about?
you. Like, I struggle. Like, I will say I appreciate this game because it also has two other modes besides the story mode. It has the tournament mode where you
Yeah.
can play as 8 people, and the winner of that tournament, you get a flashing trophy. And then you also have the 1v1, the versus mode. We take versus modes for granted sometimes, and
Yeah.
like I appreciate this one because it let me customize. First, it let me choose characters, of course, but also let me customize the health bar, the key bar,
Yeah.
whether or not it can be easy or hard. I appreciated it for that. It let me do a little bit more. I didn't think that games at that time would allow you to do stuff like that. But the fact that
And
it gave us,
honestly, it was because Super Butoden had those sorts of features that that became something that was a standard across Dragon Ball Z like fighting games, and especially in the 16-bit era for a while, man. Yeah, like
yeah,
that alone, just being able to say like, nah, you know what? I want to set it to where my key don't go away, just because like, yo, I need to figure out what I'm doing. Right? It
hmm
might not have a literal practice mode, but you can kind of build one to your liking, right? And
exactly.
that's enough to be able to say like, okay, I'm getting more fun out of this game than normal.
Exactly. So I can't slander this game because it did a lot more than I expected on the first time around. And the fact that it sold 1.45 million copies in Japan, it's still the best selling Dragon Ball video game in Japan to this date.
Yeah, man.
Like, and Xenoverse has been going strong for 10 years. And I
Yeah,
don't
yeah.
understand. Like, you would think that a lot of these games would do a lot better, but no, this is still number
It's
one.
probably just like based on those immediate numbers, right? Because
Yeah.
it had the chance to hit 1.4 million in what, if we're looking about 9 months.
hmm
That's what makes it big, right? It's that
Yeah.
the game was only the most recent Dragon Ball Z fighting game for only a 9-month period of time.
Yes.
So to sell that much in that quick amount of time, that just goes to show you, like Dragon Ball Mania was huge at the
I, I
time.
I can't believe that too because, like you said, Super Butoden 2 came out in December of 1993.
Yeah, just later that year, just enough time for the Cell Saga to be over, and for us to be getting a couple of movies by this point.
Yes,
Because this is the one game where we do start to see movie characters included.
yeah, yeah. I didn't expect that when I first started
Yeah,
this. Like the fact that we got BoJack and Broly. This is their debut, baby. Like, come on, man. Like their first time being playable.
hell yeah, man. And the fact that Bojack and Zangia are like just like base characters,
Yes,
like
yes.
they movie 9 takes up 25% of the roster, like pretty huge when you consider all the things that were going on for Dragon Ball at the time.
hmm Now I am surprised that they did cut characters. Like when I saw
Yeah,
when I saw the roster because they took out the androids
took
and
out Frieza.
they took out Frieza. Surprised
Yeah,
by that. This is strictly Cell Saga and movies for the most part. Like I'm not upset at it. Cause I guess cause we got that in the 9 months prior. So if you
uh,
want to put in one, you can put in the other. But you know
yeah,
what I would have been surprised at? Like I know this is Super Famicom, but I'm thinking like, what if this came out on the Genesis, right? And you had like the 32X, because like with Knuckles, the add-on with Sonic 3 or whatever, and
yeah,
you could have
man.
Knuckles in that. Imagine you put in the game and then you get all the characters all together like that.
That would have been huge. That would have
Like
been huge. An add-on for it, where it's like, nah, like the Sonic 2 and Knuckles sort of
yes,
thing,
yes,
right? You
exactly.
slap the cartridges together and you got everybody. Yeah, that would have been pretty wild.
Yeah.
Um, because yeah, this is one of those things where it's very clear Bandai was just like particular on, hey, like who's marketable right now, and let's
Mhm,
just put them out.
mhm.
Uh, hell, this is the first Dragon Ball Z game where Goku's not on the base roster.
Right, right.
You gotta put in a secret code to unlock Goku and Broly.
You would think that, it's Goku. He's the titular character, but he's not here out the gate.
Yeah,
We got Gohan here first. He's not only that, right? But also like And as I saw this, I didn't think about it until like playing it. But the first game to feature underwater fighting.
Yeah, yeah, sure was, sure was. To be able to go underwater and above air, like, was huge, just for the amount of like different options you had for gameplay. Because now, just like I mentioned earlier with Super Butoden 1 and 2, you had like those two different
Mhm,
planes. Now you have three, so it kind of adds a different like strategy of like, hey, I'm gonna go down in the water while they're way up in the air, knowing it's gonna take them that little frame it takes to jump in between, and I'm gonna go charge up down there while they can't
mhm.
hit me or something like that. Like it even though this isn't an era where competitive fighting games are like hugely known for being that way, or fighting games being built to be competitive, knowing that they give you that extra sort of like layer to thinking about it, like, it's pretty nuts, man.
Yeah. Not only that, you know what I would have probably loved if they didn't take Frieza out is that scene where Goku charges the two orbs
Oh
underwater.
yeah,
Like you we would have
yeah,
that would have been the perfect time to showcase something like that, right?
that would have
Uh,
been really neat.
but it's still great that we have that. But also, like, I'm not upset at it because all in all, it did improve on Super Butoden. You know, you can actually charge key properly now with
Yeah,
proper button inputs. You know, there's faster movement. The story mode is probably even better because there's like routes that you can take in the
hmm,
story mode. Like, I when it comes to Dragon Ball games, you typically just follow the regular path of like, okay, we're gonna go through the Saiyan saga, we're gonna go through the Android Cell, Boo, and we're gonna keep redoing it, right? But
yeah,
the fact that this lets you follow between like Piccolo, Gohan, you know, it lets you do different characters at different times. You have multiple branches. It felt like a proper fighting game. It felt like something like Street Fighter, where you have your certain lineup of characters, and then you get that character's type of ending. You know, I didn't expect that. I didn't expect that this game would take that much care into like a story mode like this. It gave you what ifs. I thought what ifs existed only in
yeah, man.
Like starting in
Nope,
Budokai. Like, come
started
on.
right here. Started right here, man. Like, you can have it to where, like, you're playing with Trunks, and then it's like, okay, cool. Like, how would the story go if I had lost against certain people? Because that's another thing. In the
Mhm.
story mode, you can lose, and then it just keeps going. So it takes into consideration, oh, you lost that last fight. Okay, cool. Now you have different enemies you can choose as opposed to if you won. Like, it's just huge. And
Yeah.
what I think is really interesting about Super Butoden, two things actually. Super Butoden 2 uh, is a rare, very rare look into a window of time for Dragon Ball that, in retrospect, not a lot of people consider. Where, like we mentioned, Goku wasn't the main character in this, right? Everyone always talks about like, hey, like, it's rumored that Toriyama was considering Gohan as the main character for a while, right? And this is that period of time where like Toei, who was mostly making
Yeah.
that sort of decision and how the
Yeah.
promotion was going, said no. We just had movie 9 come out. Gohan's the main character. We just finished the Cell Saga. Gohan's the main character, so we're gonna have him as the main person you play as in this game. With Goku now being gone, there's a reason why he's just not immediately available. They're treating Goku like a legacy character.
Yes.
Of course, by the time Dragon Ball wraps up, right, it doesn't wind up being this way. But
But that's the interesting thing. Like,
yeah,
you get all of this in Japan, and you're going by the Japan thing. Like, I feel like if they tried to redo it now, it would go over a lot better because the fandom is widespread now. It's
mm,
worldwide. Like, I'm glad that we got the confirmation of Sparking Zero giving us like different types of what ifs because we
yeah,
can kind of live out those fantasies. But the fact that it started out right here and we were able to like see Gohan kind of take on the main character, like you said, in this time frame, it that's a personal real life what if, what if they decided to follow up on all of that and like we can keep going and man, man,
it's really nuts, man. And then to think that, like, while at the time, 1993, this game goes about as west as France. And that's another thing. Like,
Yeah, this is the
I know
first. This like
for American fans, we don't really have the experience of knowing that there was a Dragon Ball boom in the mid 90s in Europe. But like, this game was being sold in stores in France and Japan at the same time. You know what I'm saying?
I hate the Dragon Power. I like in retrospect, I feel like Dragon Power killed the dream. If they had just like did it justice and just called it Dragon Ball, and they
Yeah,
could have
man.
followed up on marketing properly. You know what I'm saying? Like, I nothing
And
else
it's like
to that game, but like
they
build
didn't
on
have
the
the
hype.
experience we did, where it's like, oh, I gotta rely on a fucking fan sub. Like, they
Right.
were watching it on TV. They were watching it on TV. They were maybe only like 2 months behind. Insane to fucking think, man.
I can't I just can't imagine what that life would have been like in the mid '90s
Yeah,
being a Dragon Ball fan. Like we got that life in the 2000s, late '90s,
yeah.
but like at like going like
We might look at this shit entirely different if America had a Dragon Ball Z boom before the Pokemon boom.
right, exactly. Like, look at the boom that we had when Super came out and the Tournament of
Yeah.
Power was going on. Like, once everything got past the movies, you know what I'm saying, and
Hmm.
how weekly that looked because we didn't even have the manga out. You remember the manga was behind Dragon
Yeah.
Ball Super,
Yeah.
so like the sitting there waiting for episodes to come out weekly on Crunchyroll and possibly causing a meltdown on their servers, you know, was probably the closest thing that we could get to what the hype would have been like in just strictly mid 90s, early 90s Japan with all of this coming out, man. I just can't believe it. But
And
we're here.
it's funny you mentioned that 2015 boom too, because we didn't see this game stateside officially until 2015. Like, it kind of slept under a lot of people's radar, but if you pre-ordered a game that we're going to get to later in the series, Extreme Butoden for the 3DS, you got a digital copy of Super Butoden 2 for the 3DS. Like, I've got mine on mine to this day. And it's just nuts to think that, like, we actually were able to get our hands on like a couple of the Super Butoden games here in the States by any sort of like legal means.
Right. And that's just the thing. Like, we're talking about games for the most part that didn't come out here. That
Yeah.
just didn't come here. Like
Yeah.
the like I said earlier, like my first experience was like Final Bout.
Hmm.
Like I'm not even sure if that was like their actual first game that came here. I think it was like, of course, the first game that came out released. We're going to talk about it in a second, but like for that to be the case, and then we get into like Budokai, and like the series is already over by now. Like the
Yeah.
series is over, so what's the holdup? And the fact that we're getting everything later down the line, like you said, with the 3DS. This shit came out on the Super Famicom. Excuse me.
Right.
But yeah, I can't believe it. But enough of that. We done enough of that because we still got Super Butoden 3 to come. Like,
Yeah, man.
and this is the last one. This is the last one, and it's an interesting game
Yeah.
for somewhat. It's a mixed bag. It's most for me. It's mostly like I get it, but why did you make this decision? So it came out September 1994. So like all in all, you got like a year and a half with
Mhm.
all three games in Japan, and it pretty much covered all of Buu Saga, but it only covered Buu Saga characters. So we
Yes.
got like Dabura, we got Goku, we got Vegeta, we got Supreme Kai as a playable character. You know, that was an interesting one. I'm not gonna
Pretty
lie.
big
And then we
considering,
got
like, you know, he
yeah.
didn't really even do shit. You know what I mean?
He showed up as a menacing character. He's
Yeah.
there with Kibito, and he's like, oh shit, is this man actually like strong? Like who is this guy? Like, but that's neither here nor there. But we also get Goten and
Right.
Trunks.
Yeah.
So like, but the downside to this game from in my opinion, this is the biggest downside, is that there's no story mode.
None at all.
No story mode. They took out
It's
the
just
story
tournament
mode.
mode and versus. That's it. And honestly, I mean, I guess I get it, right? Because the game only covers the world tournament portion of the Boo arc up until Boo's hatched. That's it.
Yes,
That's
but
it.
but also like they do. Well, you're right. They do cover up until Blue's Hatch because we do get the stage of them fighting in Bobity's
In Boo's
spaceship.
ship. Yeah,
Yeah. So like I it's that's cool, but like dang man, I feel like that's wasted potential.
it is. It is. Because you could have released this game like 3 months later and had a whole litany of characters to be able to choose from. But
But you know
you
what I
know,
also think, like at the same time, because this is still the Super Famicom, I think around this time the PlayStation was out. We're moving on to the N64.
yeah, it's about to
So
come out. Yeah.
yeah, so like I guess I get it, but you know, if you're gonna release this game, probably just push it to the PlayStation. Make it a release title. You know what I'm saying? Like I know the PlayStation probably isn't proven at this time, but I think you have an awareness of the type of possibilities that are capable with this game because you look at
And
Capcom releasing like Mega Man games right here in the same
yeah.
style as but yeah, I just
And like the
I,
thing is like it just really seems to me that their resources were just elsewhere, right? By
yeah.
this point in time, this is an era where Dragon Ball is getting all kinds of games outside of just fighting games, right?
Mhm.
And we're dealing with even just more than the Super Nintendo, right?
Mhm.
Earlier that year, you had Buyu Retsuden, which is
Mhm.
basically the lost Butoden brother on the Genesis, right?
Mhm.
Then after Dragon Ball Z is all said and done, you get one more Super Nintendo game with Hyper Dimension, which is a whole different beast of a fighting game. Like, I mean, we're talking about the most technical one they did. This is the one that really feels more like a Street Fighter or a Tekken or something like that. Like, in that sort of early era of having 3D sort of battles, right? Um,
Mhm.
but yeah, it just really feels like with Super Butoden, they knew like, okay, like we have to get this next game out for the Super Nintendo because we're licensed to do it, but we're focused on where things are going next. And I think even one of the games we mentioned today is literally the spiritual successor to the Butoden series.
Yes. Yes. And so like I'm not upset at this trilogy of games because they're
Yeah,
still releasing Butoden. Like when was the latest game that came out? Like 2015? Like
yeah, Extreme Butoden for the
yeah,
3DS
like it's such a beloved series, and I would think like Fighters itself is kind of like a
is
successor.
yeah. We don't get fighters without Butoden for sure.
Yes, yes. So like the evolution of the series has come a long way. You can see it from the first game all the way up until now, and I'm just happy that like we had some type of baseline to go from because in my opinion, it did get better and it did cover more
A whole
um,
lot better.
as we go on. However, there is that one thing. Well, I'll get to it in a second. So we still got to talk about Ultimate Battle 22 because it came out in between that and Final Bout, but it didn't come out here until 2003. So it's
Yeah.
like it's a it's a lost gem, but not really because Japan got it in 1995 on the PlayStation, and I dig the character roster. Let me start there. The
Yes.
reason it's called Ultimate Battle 22 is because there are 22 characters playable out the gate. You got Gohan, you got Goku, you got Vegeta, you got Trunks, Piccolo, Krillin, Tien, Frieza, Zarbon, Raccoon. This is like a Budokai roster, bro.
It
Like
is. It is.
this is
This is
literally
also like where things start, where like the first kind of time you see where like, oh, we've got multiple Gokus or multiple like
yeah.
of a certain character, right? But it's only like two versions of them, so it's like okay, they play different enough, they feel different enough There's none of that like, oh, what's with all these damn Gokus or anything like that, you know?
Exactly. Though they do have on here that it's like they introduced a secret character in Vegito, but it's
Yes.
really Gogeta.
So in the English version, we have Vegito. And he's named Vegito.
Mm-hmm.
But it's Gogeta.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wild. It's wild. I don't understand. And that's only in the English version too. I have no idea why they did it like that. Makes no sense to me. But look, I mean, even it's just a weird time for Dragon Ball games at that period of time too, right? Because this is like that weird like Budokai era where like every character's name in the game has like the little restricted mark next to it or has a TM next to it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
it's just a weird sort of era for Dragon Ball games in the West, right?
I don't get it either because they do it in Budokai. Like,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, why are the copyrights to characters' names? Like,
It's just like right there. Like I don't understand. I don't get it either. There must have been some sort of weird rights hold up with Funimation at the time.
yeah,
But to get to at Ultimate Battle 22, I actually want to talk more about this later because I have
well, yeah.
very strong opinions about Ultimate Battle 22, and you'll
You're
actually be surprised to think that, to know that they're good. They're very good opinions. But the things I will mention, I think this is one of the coolest games ever made because it's the only game where when you put in a secret code for the extra characters, the title of the game changes. Like
yes,
on the menu, it says Ultimate Battle 27 after you unlock the secret 5 characters that there are to the roster with a little code. So if you ever see me refer to UB27 or UB22, I'm talking about the same game. But Ultimate Battle 22. See, even right now, right? I just can't help myself. Ultimate Battle 22 was really cool because it is that successor to the Butoden series. You've got very similar like control schemes. You've got characters being able to go into the air and on the ground. Though this time it's completely gets rid of the split screen mechanic. Now, since we're working with the graphics engines that are on the Sega Saturn and the PS1, right? We're able to process the game a little bit better without having to do all that junk. So I really dig the cell animations for the characters on here. Like before you had these like they looked like they were made for video games.
yeah.
This looks like somebody took like specific animations from the show, clipped them into like mid frames and said, boom, here's the characters.
I dig
And I
that a
think
lot.
it's really cool because especially when you consider this is 95, putting those guys on those like 3D backgrounds, pretty fucking cool at the time.
Yeah, I dig that a lot. I will. We're gonna get to it a little bit more. We're gonna talk about like underrated, and we're gonna have a special episode for all the games that
Yeah.
we can't cover. But and this is gonna be one of them. We might make this the first game because there are while you have positive receptions at the time, people didn't have that. You know, and
Yeah,
we're gonna talk
yeah.
we're gonna talk about
Yeah.
that.
And at the time I didn't either. Hindsight is 2020, and in 2024 I have more controller options. You know what I'm saying?
That's a fact. That's a fact. You know. But we're gonna get to the final game. Final game. Dragon Ball GT Final Bout, released August 21st, 1997 for the PlayStation. Like I said, I should have known that this was not going to be like, you know, a very special game. It looked special once we actually played it, but like at the time I couldn't turn it on, and something just told me, you know what, I'm gonna just leave it at that. I'm gonna just Drewski hands, I'm gonna just walk away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny, you know, this game here, for a lot of us who grew up in the early Dragon Ball era, like when it was airing on Toonami, right? If you were younger back then and you ever were even on internet 1.0, right? You remember seeing videos or little 240p
Little frames.
clips, yeah, of like this Dragon Ball Z game with like these 3D characters. Hell, I remember seeing pictures of this in
Yes.
game packs and tips and tricks. And I was like, what the fuck is that game? Why is Super Saiyan Goku little?
I
What
used
is
to see it
going
on
on?
Blockbuster. Like they did have like little clips of things at Blockbuster just
Yeah.
playing in the background, you know. So like there was an awareness for this game, but also mainly because it had Dragon Ball on the title and it showed Goku, but it was in a different outfit. It said GT.
Yeah.
When we're used to Z, you really don't have an idea of what this GT thing is. It's like, is this Dragon Ball AF type
What is
deal?
a
You know,
GT?
like
Yeah.
yeah,
What is a GT? Because when you think about it too, right? The first wave when this game was released, the first print was October 97. So if you saw this out anywhere, if you saw this at a flea market or your cousin that knew what the fuck they were doing with PS1s had this game, you still had no concept of what you were looking at, right? It's only the year later Dragon Ball Z comes out and we're like, Dragon Ball GT, that's weird. We don't know what that is, but fuck it, we'll take it. You
you
know?
know what's even crazier about that? The fact that like we're getting Z, like we barely got Dragon Ball, like the
Yeah.
proper Dragon Ball,
We don't
because
know
you
what a
know,
Super Saiyan is yet.
like Goku in this game is voiced by Steve Bloom,
Yes.
not Sean Shamel. Steve Bloom. You got
Tom,
Gohan.
Tsunami.
You got Gohan as Lex Lang. You don't know who that is? For all my new heads, that's Ghetto in Jujutsu Kaisen. Like
Yes.
who?
Ghetto as Gohan is wild.
Like the fact that we have these people who are like still industry legends, like not voicing their normal characters. Like we're used to certain dialects. Of course, in the Japanese versions, they're normal
Yeah.
voices. You know what I'm saying? But like there had to be something coming up with like the English dub, because it makes no sense that we have all of these different characters. They're good characters, by the way. They voice them really
Mm-hmm.
well, but also like it's just different. But to get into the Goku thing, this is one of the craziest things about the roster, where it is 95% Saiyans.
Yes.
95% Saiyans. A quarter of it is damn near all Gokus. There's 6 versions of Goku in this game.
Yeah, man. Like this is where it starts getting egregious for real.
Like we got regular Goku. We got Kid Goku. We got the Super Saiyan versions of them. That's 4 already. And then
Yeah.
we get into Super Saiyan 4 Goku. You know, like it, how are we doing this? And then we just got regular Super Saiyan 2 Goku. Like,
Just there. Yeah.
yeah, like
Just chilling.
come on. And then we got GT Trunks, Super Saiyan GT Trunks, Future Trunks, Cell, Frieza. Pawn is available, which is kind of dope. I like that they added.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like we get her in there.
And
Uh,
that's really the first time you ever get her in a game for like many years.
yes, like
Yeah.
and for a very long time. Like
Yeah.
yeah. We got Vegeta, and then we got Vegito. Somehow we got Vegito over
So
over.
I think a lot of what this has to do with is that when at the time this game came out, right? Um GT is still ongoing. They just have gotten past the baby fight, right?
Yes,
So in Japan, this game was released as Dragon Ball Final Bout. They
yes.
added the GT here for whatever godly reasons, I have no idea. But when you think about it that way, like this is in their own way, sort of a continuation of the Budokai games by having these Z characters and having a few GT characters added. And the only reason why I say like this isn't really a successor fully is because it doesn't really have the same gameplay. But like I'm a big fucking Butoden head. A lot of the same theme songs that had started out famous in the Butoden games made their
Mm-hmm.
way to the Ultimate Battle games are all in this, right?
Mm-hmm.
And these are theme songs that were considered like, oh, that's that character's theme for those games. So that sort of leads me to believe like they were thinking like, hey, this is in the same vein as your Super Butodens. It's just this is our first foray into 3D, so fuck it. Let's give all the different characters that we can to some degree, because really the only way you're going to be able to tell who they are is by the colors of the big blocks on their chests. When
And
60% of the characters have triangle point, yellow
yeah,
pointy hair, you know, like
and it felt kind of like a Tekken style kind of game,
Yeah.
which is I'm not upset at that. Like when you're making the jump into 3D and it's on the PlayStation, I can dig this, because they look like their characters for the most part,
Yeah.
but at the same time, the movement is kind of clunky, like
Not even kind of. Very.
yeah.
Very.
I ain't wanna go there. But also like you don't fly. You have to be
No.
knocked into the air to fly. Like who thought of that? At least in the regular Butoden games, there's a button to transition between air and ground, Like I didn't
And
think that.
bro, I'll tell you as someone who really played this game heavy in middle school, bro. There's so many like, gotcha, you're stuck. Like touch of death combos. Like this game is messy. Like this game, if you tried to play it for long enough, could ruin friendships if one of you had any semblance of how to play a fighting game. Like the touch of death combos in this game are insane. It's nuts.
Oh God.
Balancing is just be damned.
Oh man. Oh man. I believe it too. I believe just trying to get used to the movement in 2024. I don't recommend it. This even as a novelty, I don't
Yeah,
recommend it. I
man.
like
And
it.
then the final boss is Golden Grade 8 Baby Vegeta, who takes up the whole screen.
I'm not gonna lie,
He
that's
takes
kind of
up
dope
like
though. That's kind of dope though. Like while he does take up the screen,
it's cool that you have this is the first Dragon Ball Z fighting game with a giant enemy. I think
yes,
that's fire. I think
yes,
that's fire. But like if I wasn't moving at the same speed as him, maybe I might feel like I have an advantage or something. But when I
yes,
get close to him and he just swings that fist, and now I'm all the way back here, I'm not having that much fun no more. And that's the only way you can unlock down Super Saiyan 4 Goku without using the cheat.
yes, yes.
So it's like, you know,
I would have liked for them to. Well, never mind. I wouldn't. I would have liked for them, but I wouldn't have liked for them, to at least try another crack once GT is all over and done with, and that we
yeah,
final bout two. Like give it
yeah,
one more go. But I'm glad that they waited. They waited to give us GT somewhat proper, but that's not for a
yes.
long while though.
That's not till the next series of games, you
Yeah,
know.
yeah.
Uh
Um.
it's one thing I will give GT credit for before we wrap up though. Still to this day, one of the most fire entrance videos. Like
Mhm.
some clips that you see today using GIFs on Twitter all over the place are
Yes.
from this video. Like, if you ever seen the clip of Ultimate Gohan charging up and there's fire around him, and it's like, whoa, I never knew his power up and fire in it. It's from this intro. Like, it's just solid animation, man. Whatever animation team they had working on GT really fucking just like was in the bag of like throwing in the greatest of Z style animation and GT all in one. Like, it's only a minute long, but if you get the chance to look it up here on the YouTube, man, like go ahead and look up that opening. It'll get you
Yeah.
amped to want to play at least some kind of Dragon Ball game.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. We didn't talk about those intros, but a lot of these game intros are pretty clean. Like
Oh
Super
yeah,
Butoden is like giving the introduction of like Master Roshi with young Krillin and
yeah,
Goku.
man.
Like, oh man,
Super
I love.
Butoden 2 with
Yeah, the
Gohan's
first person
arms
view.
flying in.
That's kind of hard.
Da-da-da,
That's kind of
da-da.
hard. I'm not gonna
Yeah,
lie.
man.
Oh man,
Ah,
they
it's
did it.
so good. And then you get
That
to the press start screen, it's just him standing on the lookout.
ah, it's so good. I will.
Don't make them like that no more.
I will say my favorite intro is gonna be. We're gonna talk about it in the next episode, but I'm glad that they started doing a little bit more in
Yeah.
presentation and more in engine stuff. But we'll talk about that for another time.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
thank you, bro. Thank you guys for
Absolutely.
listening. Um, we're gonna be going. This is probably gonna be like I don't know how many episodes, probably like 5 episodes. But next time we're going to cover the Budokai trilogy,
Oh,
1, 2, and 3.
yes. The Dragon Ball Z series, man. Look,
Yeah,
look. That's where it all
yeah,
starts. If you never had an emulator, you never had that cousin. You know what I'm saying? Maybe you missed out on the PS1 games. A lot of people did. No knocking you, for real. You could have been too busy playing Metal Gear Solid, Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8. You know what I'm saying? You could have been too busy playing Tomb Raider. I don't blame you. But by the time we got to that PS2, baby, and I know
Listen,
y'all remember, if you old enough, you remember that Game Facts cover. Goku going Super Saiyan on it, and it's like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Dragon Ball Z's the cover of a Game Facts. Why? Ooh, I can't wait to get into that memory and what all that meant next week, man. It's trust me, we in for a time.
listen. That episode is for the real ones. That one is for y'all. That one is gonna be the biggest one that we do until we get to the Budokai Tenkaichi, and then we're gonna keep going down.
Oh yeah.
Like, stay tuned for the next one. Please follow all of our socials, The Lookout RNC. We're on Twitter, we're on YouTube, we're on IG, we're on TikTok, we got Spotify, we got Apple, we got Google. Wherever you can find
everywhere.
us, we're
we
there.
everywhere,
We
baby.
are everywhere, man. And this is just the beginning of Plug and Play. So stay tuned, and we'll be back plugged in next time. Thank you.